Hi, hello, my name's Ollie and this is Bookdraw. For those of you who don't know what Bookdraw is, I basically enjoy queer fiction and I make images. You'll see me do a little bit of an illustration with the piece of fiction which I'm talking about. And today I am talking about The Angel of History, which is by Rabih Alameddine. And this book I feel really nervous about talking about. It's set today. It's a one night's reflection from the lead character, who is Jacob, but because he's of dual heritage, he's Yemenese born, he ends up going over to Stockholm and then to San Francisco, and he's living there during the heights of the AIDS crisis. And this is him now, I'm assuming somewhere in his 50s, reflecting on his history and everything that happened, the trauma that he was put through, and his feelings basically in one night, his kind of reflections on his past, his history with his mother and his father, but also the loss of his lover and 5 other friends. And the reason why I feel so nervous about talking about it is because it's such a powerful story, and I don't want to be disingenuous by saying that. It was in some parts really difficult to read, in some parts it's really funny, really captivating, but it is a challenging read in a lot of ways, and it is challenging to read it as someone who didn't grow up a part of that lifestyle, who hasn't grown up of that era. And the lead character, he is so angry and cynical and resentful about his past that you almost feel like you're encroaching or observing something which you actually, it's too uncomfortable, it's too difficult to feel a part of, and there's part of it which is really celebrating that anger. And I think because when I went to the talk by Dr. Monica Pearl, she was talking about how it is a really angry story, but it's also it's something where there's no sense of shame in the actual the person, the character, in terms of what they were going through, and it's just putting it out there and it's saying this is our truth, this is our story. She was a major activist during that entire period, and she fought for a lot of the rights and in terms of making change. And when she did a reading from this, part of which the passage that she chose to read about, how Jacob is at a dinner with some friends, and they talk about a friend's partner who died, and they say, oh, it's really sad, and he is so furious by this statement, and he's enraged, and he's just like, oh, that's so terrible for your friend. You're one person who died. Like, everyone I knew basically died around me during the 80s because of AIDS and HIV, and then it talks about how there's a lack of knowledge about our history and where we've come from, and that's what Angel of History is all about in terms of that erasure. And he's like, you should know your fucking history. And it was like, when she was reading this, I was like, oh my god, I don't know my history. And I don't want to sound like really ignorant and naive, but I think I am. I think a lot of people are, and probably take that for granted. I think that's what this story is really about, is acknowledging where we've actually come from and how much has changed, and how much safer we are, and how AIDS is now preventative. It's something that can be controlled, whereas at the time it was a death sentence. It came out of nowhere. It infiltrated people's lives until they weren't aware of it, and then all of a sudden they were getting sick, and then it was eroding them really slowly, and then it all of a sudden just killed them one after the other. And he's saying in the process of 6 months he lost 6 people that he knew, and he's left alone. And I think there's a lot of survivor guilt which comes through in the story as well, and he's coping with that and he's trying to deal with it, but he's doing it in a really magical and beautiful way. There's dialogue between the devil and death, and those two characters are quite key in the way that death is all about claiming lives and wants people to just forget and not learn from their past, and wants people to progress and move forward, and he just wants to keep on taking these souls, keep on taking them away from people, stopping them from learning from their mistakes. And he combines it with other social themes in terms of what's happening in the Middle East, in terms of what's happening in Palestine and Syria. He talks about drones attacks, he talks about different bombs and conflicts, and he touches on class in quite funny, satirical way through a fairy tale where there's a cage in the penthouse, I think the chapter's called, and that's like, it's pretty dark. It's really cleverly crafted. It's really awkward, which is a repeated theme through this, and he is letting it all go. But it's so angry, and it's so cynical and desperate and traumatic. It's really traumatic. It is really challenging. It's difficult to go all the way through, but if you do, it's very rewarding. I haven't even touched on the fact that he's also supported by these 14 saints that come in and out of his life. And he acknowledges that these 14 saints are his own creation and a hallucination. They're there to support him, and it's how he understands the world. And what I loved about the saints and death and the devil is that they're so camp and so dressed up and completely ridiculous in the context of very serious religion. It is a satire of what a saint probably should be, but quite possibly could be, and it's an interesting way of representing religious iconography through the lens of someone who is queer. And I thought it was really cool for doing that. But each of those saints support him in some way. It probably sounds quite absurd as a story. It really reminded me of Angels of America. And I think that's probably quite influenced from that. I mean, probably get shot for saying that by the author, I'm not sure. I would never want to meet this person. Like, I think he would terrify me. But then I watched a video about him, and he just seems like the most delightful guy, a really non-scary individual, but he is just so angry and terrifying in this story that it does just make you go, not what he's trying to achieve, I don't think. I think he wants you to understand the reality of HIV and AIDS, and he wants you to understand how devastating that can really be in a really truthful, honest, and authentic way, and he certainly does that. And if you can handle the way in which he wants to tell that story in his frank and brutally honest way, then you'll come out of it being thankful that you've had the opportunity to witness and observe part of that story. You learn something about yourself, and you learn something about your history and how you look at history and how it's erased and changed over time, and it makes you more aware of that in some ways. I think if you're a younger reader, you might be massively put off with this because it comes from a much older voice. I would just say ignore that. It's an older person who's very resentful of young, youthful people because they've not had to put up with something that was put upon them, put upon a whole group of people and put upon this individual, and he's very angry and bitter at those people for being able to live young, youthful lives, and you can completely appreciate and understand that. I would not let that prohibit you from engaging and reading the story though. The voice might rub you up in the wrong way. I think that's totally fine. I think that's partly what the story's there to do. But yeah, give it a go. Give it a go and see what you think. Let me know what you think. I mean, I personally struggled with this, but I found it really rewarding. That's probably how to sum it up. And I hope you check it out and give me some feedback about what you think as well, because I've not seen many people review this one, so please do. Okay, catch you later. Bye.
Subscribe!